So you are a Morehouse man. Am I correct about that?
You better ask somebody.
As I sit here staring across from the house Morehouse t-shirt.
The house.
You're lucky I don't hold that against you. So that's like a more conventional way that you received your education. But now I would say unconventionally, you are absolutely a graduate from the College of YouTube.
Yes.
That is your new go-to, or the College of Google It.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's talk about ways to take responsibility for your education journey, shall we?
Oh, this should be fun. Let's dive right in.
This is Mikel-Claire.
And this is Trey.
And we are the couple of entrepreneurs. We're here to share with you our journey of successes and setbacks as we enter the world of entrepreneurship now that we no longer have 9-to-5s due to the new normal of the world and the pandemic.
Join us as we race the clock to start earning money, gain consistency, and overcome self-doubts and uncertainty as we search for our voices and obtain personal and financial growth.
So what do you think has been the best way for you to have taken responsibility for your education journey? Or did somebody else take responsibility for you?
Okay, that's a good question. No, I'm not going to let somebody else just take responsibility for my own education. I'm pretty stubborn, and I like things on my own terms and doing things my own way.
What?
But even still, even for people like me that are stubborn, that only want to do things their way on their own terms, there is a whole lot of value in talking to somebody who has already done it. One of the first things I did was attend what was known as a startup week. I got a chance to just listen to other people who are already entrepreneurs in the digital space and just listen to kind of the things that they've done and get a good idea of the path that they have taken and just get firsthand from people that have done it. Another one is keeping in contact with somebody who's finding incredible amounts of success online and actually talking to them and joining one of their groups and private messaging back and forth regarding how they got started. So talking to someone was a really important first step of increasing my educational journey. When it came to cakes, like what was one of the things that helped start you on your journey?
I started from a place of my own creativity. And then what I did was I looked at other cake artists to see what they were doing or how, and you kind of educate yourself that way. And for that particular field, I think it's all about practice.
Okay.
So there's an element of having to do like hands-on things in order to learn in that regard.
I know you kind of like joked around with me regarding like my YouTube education. And there's a lot of truth to that, and I'm going to jump into that a little bit later. But you kind of, sort of, were inspired by people who have already done it in a YouTube-ish kind of way. I do remember you watching a lot of shows on the Food Network regarding the cake industry, caking and baking industry. Now, I know you're not sitting directly in front of these masters of the caking and baking world, but you were still able to pull some information and some wisdom and some guidance from these particular shows. Does that even count as a form of scholarship?
I think it does. And in that regard, I did actually watch YouTube as well. I do watch some YouTube videos that are tutorials on how to do certain cake techniques and things like that, because it helps to see something be done in order to emulate it or to take an idea and twist it into your own type of thing. I definitely think it is a type of education, though, because you're learning something. You're learning a tool that's going to help you in what it is that you're trying to achieve. So that in itself is an education as far as I'm concerned. And, you get to see people try and fail or try and succeed. And when they succeed, you can kind of follow that example. Right. What is it that you get out of YouTube? Like, what value does that have in your education journey? And is it truly education?
I do believe that it is an education, But I think the bigger question is the why somebody would choose to go the YouTube route. And a big answer behind the why is, what resources do you have available to you? Not everybody can afford to go to another four-year institution or go get their master's or their doctorate in whatever field that it goes to and incur all of that debt. Some people may not have the time or the schedule to permit them to go to a community college in order to get their education. Some people may not have any mentors. So you have to realize you can only move forward with the resources that you have available. And a lot of that, it deals with time and money. For me, YouTube was easy because it's free and I can watch it anytime I feel like it. But there are problems with YouTube. As great and amazing as the YouTube education can be, it's got its definite fair share of problems, oversaturation being one. Too many gurus telling you how something should and shouldn't be done. But regardless of the bad or the things that may be discouraging from going on that platform, if you don't have anything and time is not convenient for you for it to be on your own terms, YouTube may be one of the best options available. And it was one of the options I took because of both of those reasons. I could get quick answers without spending a lot of time and spending no money.
I think another thing to look out for on YouTube, and I think it's a great resource, but misinformation.
Yes.
You have to be very careful what you actually decide is truth versus fiction. Mm-hmm. So you have to be very, very careful with that and be aware. Do you think that people would recognize that or know when they were getting misinformation, or how did they kind of like weed through that?
No. And that's the other education you're going to get, learning how to filter through what is either truthful or pertinent to you. The beauty of YouTube is that it's fast. If you want one of the better old school methods of getting information regarding what it is that you want to do, there is nothing more solid than going to a library, going to a public library. But it takes time. You have to actually move your body. The library has a time that it opens, it has a time that it's closed, and you have to share resources. But the likelihood of you getting misinformation in a library is going to be a lot less than it is from going to a source like YouTube. So there's a payoff. You're going to be sacrificing a lot of things, but gaining a lot of speed if you go the YouTube route.
When you're talking about speed, I think for me, like online courses, I think that you can watch an online course or take an online course that is very specific to whatever it is that you're trying to learn. And I think that is a time saver. So if I wanted to see specifically how to make chocolate buttercream, like you can go and specifically find chocolate buttercream versus trying to figure out, the basics. You can figure out something that might be a little more advanced or a little more specific to what it is that you're trying to learn. And for me, that's a huge time saver.
You've covered a tremendous amount of ground. Like, I've just been blown away with how far you've come from where you started to your skill set now. I know that you wouldn't have been able to make it this far only watching the Food Network and only watching YouTube videos. You did something that's very understated, and that is you learned by doing. And I think that's one of those things that might have forced you to hone your craft quicker. How do you feel about that? Or am I just kind of like oversimplifying it?
I think there's something to be said about trial and error. I think there's something to be said about attempting something and failing and then figuring out what happened and fixing it and doing it differently another time. I think if you don't have all of those attempts under your belt, you don't have that knowledge or that experience. I know that for you, we talk about experience a lot. Like, experience is the best teacher in a lot of cases. And so I think for that particular example that you gave, that's why that has been such a help in what I've been doing. So learning by doing is one way of doing it and jumping in. But what about if you're working for, say, like other people? How does that work?
I think the second fastest way, right after learning by doing, I think the price for learning by doing, like the way you did it, I think the sacrifice that you have to go through is the loss of time. it's taking you a little bit of time to get as good as you are, because that experience takes a lot of effort. That's a lot of cakes in order to get that. A faster way is if you're working in a field that you already enjoy, because then you get the speed of learning from other people's mistakes that are working next to you. If by some chance you don't want to go the course of YouTube college and you don't want to enroll in a 4-year institution or get your master's or doctorate and all those other ways, and you don't have time to go to the library or any of the other examples that we've given, I think the next best option is to get a job in that field of whatever it is that you want to do. If you don't want a full-time commitment and you have the time available, and especially if you're young, internships, there's a reason why internships are popular, and there's a reason why they're pushed. Is because the amount of information that you learn is considerably faster than anything you'd read in a book. Get a part-time job if you can't temp and you're a little bit older and you're in between jobs. Get a part-time job. Volunteer for a company when it comes to certain types of services. Do things like on Fiverr or Upwork or any of these websites where you can outsource your work in the field that you want to do so that you can get more experience. And then, of course, the last one is just work full-time. But there's going to be sacrifices for those as well. A lot of that is you can't dictate what you want to do because you're being hired by somebody else and you have a responsibility to the person that's paying you. So there's not any one clear-cut way, but I do believe if you actually got boots on the ground and you're working in the field and profession that you eventually want to become an entrepreneur in, is one of the best ways.
I definitely agree with that as far as gaining experience, gaining knowledge from people that are doing what it is that you aspire to do. Mm-hmm. Another thing, if you don't have the time necessarily to do that, or it may be something very specific that you're looking to gain information about, is attending a workshop or attending a panel discussion, going to a meetup. So that way, you're still learning the information, you're still able to ask questions and see how someone's done it before you, but not investing that full amount of time that you may or may not have. Or like I said, if it's something very specific or something that could take a short amount of time to be taught or to learn about or to ask a question about, then I think that that's a good way to go. So with all of that, though, what are some problems that you may run into as you're trying to take responsibility for your journey, your education journey?
You are going to run into some problems with any path that you take that we've mentioned. There's going to be a caveat, right? I think this kind of ties into what I believe is the best way to become an expert in whatever craft that you're going into with the least amount of problems, and that is to find a mentor. I think it's probably one of the more challenging things to do because you have to humble yourself in order to, learn everything you need to do. You have to admit that I don't know anything and I'm going to listen to this person that's already an expert in that field. And then you have to find them as well. You're going to have things more so on your terms regarding how you want to go about learning the process. So if you're trying to find the least amount of problems and get there the fastest, I don't think you're going to beat having a mentor. Regarding some of the other things, you're going to have to pay either in time or money. Those are the big two costs with most things. I think the easiest thing to do regarding educating yourself is going to be the internet. It's going to be especially a platform like YouTube because it costs no money and the only thing you're giving is your time, but the time is on your terms. But you're not going to have any expert advice. You're not going to know for a fact that this is the path you need to go down, and you're going to have enough wisdom to kind of decide that for yourself. Whereas like a mentor, you trust in the fact they're going to take you where you need to be. Are there any problems that I'm missing regarding this abundance of different types of educational journeys and paths that we've been talking about?
Well, for me, like you mentioned already, I think time is one of the big ones, especially if you have other responsibilities. A lot of them are excuses, and we make excuses for things that we think are difficult. So I think that if you can get past what you perceive as something that is a problem and just see it as an excuse and then find ways around it, like some of the examples that we've given today, then you can surpass whatever. But there are going to be problems with time and money.
Yeah.
That's just the bottom line. So speaking of time, I think it's time. I don't want to say it, to put a pin in it.
Yeah. That's my baby. Go on and close us out.
All right. Well, thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Couple of Entrepreneurs. We are taking responsibility for your educational journey, money, entrepreneurship, all things that have to do with business. So please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Tell your friends and family all about this wonderful, wonderful podcast that you've discovered, and take responsibility for educating yourself on our beautiful, beautiful podcast. And once again, thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next time. Peace out.